howdy ho everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to the Square the Circle music channel. It's me, your old pal Mage, that's right. I'm that guy that likes to talk about, record collecting, music appreciation, rock and roll, all that great shit. So, yeah, welcome back. I haven't talked to you guys for a little while. Again, just been enjoying fun in the sun with the family and the friends and, lots of gardening and all sorts of activities. Copious amounts of activities, man. I am just like freaking exhausted all the time, every minute of every day. But man, that's what we do here in Western Oregon. We play hard when that sun comes out because we only see it for, maybe 90 days if we're lucky. 90 to 100 days of pretty glorious outdoor fun. So haven't been inside spinning much, but when I do come inside to spin the records, I've got like kind of a whole new sense of experiencing things, because when your emotions and your mood and the energy is vibing right, everything just sounds so much better and everything feels so much better. And not to say, I do, everyone kind of suffers from, clinical depression from, time to time, now and again in their lives. Some people much more than others, but especially here in the Pacific Northwest in the United States, man, it is so fucking gray for so fucking long. It just really starts to just really harp on, your overall psychological and emotional well-being. And so when you get to this time of year, everything just feels so much more like inviting and exciting, and just, and especially music. Like, music's so fantastic to enjoy during the summer months here when the sun is out. And that's where I'm at. That's how I'm feeling. I'm just like cranking this thing up and just like in the garden and singing along, and things just start to like sound different. And it has a lot to do with aging as well, man. Like, I'm starting to get a little bit older, so things are starting to sound like different. So a lot of times I get to hemming and hawing here, and I'll try to keep it as concise and short and sweet as possible. But tonight I wanted to talk about something a little bit different. I wanted to kind of go through a list of stuff that I pulled off the shelves behind me. The kind of unsung heroes, I guess you could say. Not quite literally, but these are the individuals that never get anywhere near as much respect and attention as, of course, the actual instrumentalists, vocalists, the people who are doing it right in front of your face. So I'm talking about the guys in the back behind the glass, the guys on the board, magic fingers, sticky fingers, all the men and women and everything around that and in between that, all those people, all those folks that are the masterminds of what we're hearing, all the sound engineers and the producers and the guys who master all the stuff and just give us this final package of just this beautiful art form. And the art form of sound engineer, and audio wizardry. It's really kind of just like I said, that unsung kind of, no one really thinks about it. How do they make the donuts, So let's talk about how they make the donuts, folks. Not really. I'm absolutely no expert on the subject in any way, shape, or form, or stretch of the imagination, I guess you could say. I don't know shit from Shinola, is what you could say about audio engineer, about any of that. I've done some studio recordings myself. I've been in the studio putting sound on tape, but I don't know anything about the magic. So I'm not going to profess to like have any sort of like, upper hand or, more knowledge or experience, but I'm just going to talk about my favorites. I'm just going to talk about the shit, like I was talking about all that hippie bullshit when I started my video here, all the stuff that really makes me feel extra special, and it tickles the aural, the audio sensory, whatever part of my brain that fucking goes off like fireworks when I hear these records, because it just, to me, to my personal, vibrations, this shit sounds the best. And this is just going to be stuff that's in my collection because I just want to bring up physical copies and show you guys my records. I'm not going to use like the powers of the internet to just like throw up little things. You all, you would see the dark side of the moon up here, and you would see like all that kind of standard ass bullshit that everyone talks about. I like to separate myself from other, channels, not for any real reason besides the fact that like I try to keep things, more along the lines of just kind of the stuff you don't see every day on YouTube. I'm not here to pander, guys. I don't pander to you assholes. I like to just sit here and listen to myself talk. So why don't you join me? And I'm going to tell you about my favorites in my collection, the stuff that I think sounds so sweet. So here we go. Not a top 10er or anything like that. I grabbed out a huge chunk. I've got maybe like 15 to 20 selections to talk with you guys about tonight. So starting off with a couple CDs because I don't have these on vinyl, but I will remedy that, believe you me. Especially this one. This one's super great. Huge fan of the band U2. This is my favorite album of theirs, but of course we're talking Joshua Tree. It's talking about the really ugly glare and ugly jewel case. It's fucked up. I've had this for, I don't know, decades now. 1987, right? Joshua Tree. The first 3 tracks sells it. This was like, you even hear like an absolute like, dead ringer, like calling card, like Brian Eno is all over this album. You can tell but like the intro to I Still Haven't Found What You're Looking For. But yeah, tracks 1, 2, and 3, Where the Streets Have No Name, or With or Without You. I think it's the intro to track 2 is just kind of like, the Eno is just dripping off of the fucking walls. You know what I mean? But both Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois co-produced this. And so for obvious reasons, it just sounds just immaculate. It's just gorgeous. Huge presence. Everything cuts like a knife. So beautiful. Edge's guitar. That's a really huge emphasis, you can tell, on the stylistic, sonic vibrato that is the Edge's guitar stylings. But homeboy magic fingers, dude, on the sliders up and down, mixed by Steve Lillywhite, dude. Whew. His Lillywhite fingers, just, man, the guy knows how to mix shit down. And this is, I'm pretty sure, the one that really put Steve Lillywhite like on the map, so this shit sounds amazing. Love it to death. Another one that's kind of a real recent reminder to me of how much I enjoyed these guys in the 90s. I kind of forgot about them for the better part of 20 plus years. They just recently released like a new album just last year. And I listened to it and just didn't feel much from it. But it did make me harken back to those days that I loved so dear of the early to mid 90s. And I just picked this up for $1 at a junk store and was just wholly reminded all at once, because I put it on in my car, all around me, digital quality surround sound in your car is pretty great sometimes, but Hum was notorious for that. The band Hum from the 90s, really killing it with their really cool kind of art rock sound, pulling a patchwork, bits and pieces from like shoegaze, dream pop kind of stuff that was going on through the 80s and the Europop kind of sensibility stuff, but then really slapped on that 90s alt heavier edge to it. So you have sounds reminiscent of, what Billy Corgan was doing in the early 90s with Smashing Pumpkins, just that really heavy, filtered, distorted guitar sound. Fuzz, dude, like cool fuzz though. And I'm not a guitar guy, so I don't know all the technical terms and definitions and pedals and what these guys are using, but from what Nick has taught me about guitar music, this is it's a cream dream for most guys who are guitar players, because it's just like, it's produced by the band. The guys, there was no real like solid one guy who was engineering and producing and mixing all this shit down. All the members in the band all had a hand in what was going on. But I do have some notes here specifically about this one. This was mixed down and then mastered by 2 individuals, Brian Malouf and Mark Rubel. Anyway, it sounds fucking amazing. Like I said, if you guys really like that kind of like, fuzzy tube screamer effect guitar, and the vocal presence and presentation is incredibly mellow and very digestible. yeah, anyone that hasn't listened to Hum, you know, killer, like I said, alt rock band from the 90s, dude, check them out. Oh, did I even mention the name of the album? The album's called Downward is Heavenward, 1997. Sounds amazing. If you like hard rock, sounds beautiful. Okay, I'll bring out some basic bitch shit here. I'm sure everyone was expecting something in this arena. But yeah, I mean, the guy's, you know, he set the bar for sure. In the 70s, was really making some magic, more so than a lot of the great cats of the early 70s. He really put his stamp on the late 70s. Of course, Alan Parsons is the, you know, the man, the shit. But I love the way Irobot sounds. From that opening track, just that Hammond, all the musicianship. Alan Parsons did a vast majority of the guitar playing, the synthesizer work, a lot of the keyboard work, of course, all the production, all of the studio magic and engineering, everything, mastered it, mixed it. Oh no, I don't know if he mastered this. I think I wrote it down. Someone else mastered it. Oh yeah, a man named Ted Jensen in 1977 mastered the final product for all of us, this Irobot by Alan Parsons, man. And just, like I said, all the musicianship as well. Many, many, many guest musicians in his little project that he was doing all throughout the 70s and 80s. So, of course, I have to bring out the classic Irobot. Pretty dope stuff. Sounds incredible. Here's another kind of a basic one that a lot of people would kind of expect to see on a list like this, one could say. But I think this is the only live recording that I pulled out, and I've talked about it before. It was on a list that I did on my channel about my favorite live album performances of all time. It was somewhere on my top 10. It was pretty up there. And this has been like kind of credited as being people who are, you know, critics and aficionados of, you know, decades past of, you know, classic rock music kind of hailed this as being like one of the greatest live recordings ever of a rock band. So anyway, blah, 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 without further yada, yada, of course, talking about the Who's live at Leeds. For good reason, dude. It sounds fucking incredible. And I'm like researching it. Who was on the board? You know what I mean? Who did this at Leeds, Leeds University? Who was it? Two just kind of like unknown names, I guess. I mean, I've never heard of them, but I don't know anything really. But a man named John Astley and another man named Kit Lambert were the two individuals credited for being on the board at this concert that day in 1970. And it just fucking sounds so good, dude. Not only the mix between instruments, but just the overall, like how they got that arena to sound that way. I don't know. It sounds like a really incredible studio piece of work. But anyway, yeah, 1970s live at Leeds by the Who. Killer song list, like only like 5 or 6 songs that got recorded down on this, but side 2, they do a 15-minute rendition of My Generation. That's just like drop you, kill you to your knees. And I think this is probably the last track that they played, the last song they played at that concert. They do a great version of The Magic Bus. But yeah, dude, the Young Man Blues song at the beginning of the album is fucking rad, dude. Pete Townsend sounds so good on this recording. Everybody sounds great on this recording. Keith Moon didn't fuck much up, you know. Keith Moon was playing really well at this point still. An incredible sounding live recording. So one of my very favorites. Wanted to bring that out and talk about it again. Same neck of the woods, same kind of style of music, I guess you could say, to a certain degree. But these guys got kind of like a heavier, darker, more brooding sound, almost more kind of like, you know, what we're talking when we talk about proto-metal, you know, of course, these guys being very, very heavily responsible for that. And for me personally, for my ears, this one always tickled my fancy so much more than the rest of their albums for some reason. But then I've talked about this recently, coming across a Bob Ludwig master copy of this. But yeah, 1973's Houses of the Holy by Led Zeppelin already sounds dope because Jimmy Page is a fucking really fantastic producer and engineer, recording engineer. And so he, you know, I guess they were setting up shop all over England at this point, weren't they? Like at maybe at Jimmy Page's home. Didn't he have Aleister Crowley's castle by this point in time? Maybe they were recording out of his home, Jimmy Page's home, and then maybe at Robert Plant's house or something like that. But numerous studios, locations all over the UK. And yeah, so that just gave them the ability, I read, that they had the ability now to be able to really get fully experimental with the recording style specifically. And so this is when I just started noticing. I was like, this sounds different than just kind of like their basic ass blues rock sound that they were doing all the way up through 3. You know, this one kind of like, for me, was like their jumping off point experimentally. And it just sounded so much cooler. The songs are so much cooler than a lot of their earlier stuff. And then when you have someone like Bob Ludwig take the original tapes and do a master of it, this sounds so fucking incredible, dude. All of like the end of track 2 is Rain Song, right? With all the strings and stuff, that shit pops so great on this copy. I don't know when this was redone and mastered by him, but I think it was just a couple years after its release date. I'll have to look that up. I didn't look that number up, sorry guys. But yeah, everything about this, just the overall remaster by him, just sounds gorgeous. So I wanted to bring this out and talk about it some more. Pretty happy to have this in my collection now. Bob Ludwig, you'll hear his name again here, I'm sure, maybe even numerous times. Another name, I mean, that is reoccurring. This is another real personal one for me, and a lot of people, I don't think anyone really has ever said like, oh, that album just sounds magnificent. I just think it does. It's my sensibility. It's like, you know, my style from when I was growing up, you know, my teenage years. This was a sound that was kind of like fresh and inspiring, and I enjoyed the shit out of it. The early 90s when Dave Matthews Band came around. Not just because it was just kind of, you know, in my opinion, creative, clever, ingenuitive, different than, you know, rock and roll music and what you were seeing on MTV. It was just different. It was different than anything. You couldn't put your thumb on it. So beyond the musicianship and whatever, the songwriting and all that, it sounded crystal clear and amazing. Like, how are these 5 musicians playing such different timbre and style of, you know, instruments and whatever they're doing? I mean, it's like, besides the fact that these guys were all masters of their individual instruments, they knew how to tune their instruments. They knew how to, you know what I mean? They knew how to set up their setup and sound their best. They were like, when they were brand new to the world, they were already seasoned musicians of the 80s, you know, of like the fusion jazz world and just the avant-garde, the world of the avant-garde. They were already seasoned musicians. And so you put them in the studio, you know, 5 dudes who already know what the fuck they're doing, you know, save maybe, you know, 5th man out, Stefan Lassard, their bass player, was pretty much a fucking kid when they made this. He's only a couple years older than me. So I think when Dave Matthews recorded this album with him, Stefan Lassard, the bass player, I think he was only fucking like 17 or 18 years old. Pretty awesome. Anyway, but it sounds magnificent. Again, Sticky Fingers, Steve Lillywhite. And Steve Lillywhite really had a lot more to do with this. We talked about him with the Joshua Tree, with the U2 album. A lot more to do with this. Like I said, you know, most of the mixing down, recording, everything kind of on the board. And I don't know if he did the final mastering of it. Oops, dropped my notes. Who did the final mastering on this one? Oh, again, there it is. Again, by Ted Jensen. Funny enough, 20 years later, or not quite, pretty close to, you know, 15 to almost 20 years later, there's Ted Jensen again. He was the one that mastered Irobot, Alan Parsons' Irobot, and he did the master on this one. So I just love this sound. It's just, like I said, crisp, crystal clear, new sound. It just, I don't know, it's really fantastic. Everyone give it a shot, even if you fucking hate this band and they annoy the shit out of you. Put it on and just listen to the sonic, you know what I mean? It's a sonic punch to the gut. A good punch to the gut. It's just, yeah, pretty amazing. Great sound. All right, now here's another like kind of quintessential, you know, one that, anyone would expect to be on my list. Again, anything that, you know, Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois put their magic fingers on, it's going to sound absolutely stupendous. And of course this does. This is that Apollo atmospheres and soundtracks. I guess it's not a soundtrack technically, but it just ideas and concepts surrounding, you know, moon landing, space, all that fun stuff. This is that double disc remaster reissue thing that they did a couple years ago. That they added a second disc of all, not new material, but stuff that was recorded in the same sitting, the same sessions, and just added material, second disc, tons of great stuff, sounds just amazing. You just feel like you're floating over like an ice planet, just kind of like, you know, astrally projecting and flying over an ice planet. You know, that's just, sorry guys, I'm weird. That's what this album does to me. It's sonic orgasm. It's just, it sounds so beautiful. It's dripping with goo. Dripping with golden goo. This album, it's wonderful. Originally released in 1983. No one knew what to do with this. You know what I mean? The world didn't know what to do with this in 1983. It was just such a niche thing. I have a feeling. I don't know. I was only 3 or 4 years old when this album was released, but I can imagine people at the time, like I said, just didn't know what basket to put this in. Like, what do I do with this? It's amazing, but I don't know what to do with it. Like, what do you call it? Should I show it to my grandma? I don't know. Yeah, sounds amazing. Okay, another really cool one, wonderful popular rock record. I guess you could call them more of kind of an avant, kind of an art rock band. In the early 80s, they were more kind of like a synth pop group, but I don't know a ton about these guys, but I know the moment I heard this album, again, it's kind of reminiscent of the sound I was just trying to describe or just kind of like label to the Dave Matthews Band. Just really just precise, punchy, everything just gets through sonically on a perfect level. It's never clipping, it's never too much high end, too much low end. It's always just mixed absolutely perfectly. You have such a wide variety of timbre and sound and acoustic nature going on music like this. And that's how I felt about I still feel obviously about the Dave Matthews Band, but I was talking about that similar sound. The band Talk Talk and their 1986 record, The Color of Spring. Like I said, just again, you know, wildly eclectic sound. And how do you take such a unique and oddball sound and without muddling it down into like kind of a washy, you know, easy to kick back cocktail? How do you let everyone have their individualistic piece and part and sound and still make it come across like just one happy handbasket for your ears, for your brain, you know, for your brainstem? And it sounds so wonderful. Such a perfect name for an album too, Color of Spring. It's just, this album's so colorful, sonically colorful. I can never remember the major singer-songwriter. His name is Colin something. I can never remember, but I know that another musician in the band, may it be the keyboardist or bass player. His name is Tim Freese Green. He's credited with doing a lot of the production on this, as well as another man named Dennis Weinreich. They both are credited for doing a majority of the production, and the rest of the band members too. So I think it was kind of just like an inside job, an inside project, where it was like primarily band members who really made this sound happen, made the quality of the record really shine. You'll find that a lot here in the following few selections that I have left to talk about. Is you're gonna see a little bit more of a presence of the actual band members, the music makers themselves, taking full control of how they want their overall product to you know, end up being presented to the world. But yeah, this album is so magnificent, especially again like the opening 3 tracks. Just, you know, Happiness is Easy, I Don't Believe in You, Life's What You Make It, especially Life's What You Make It. Dude, all those piano, interesting off-tempo piano cycle things that he's doing with the great rhythm section, upright bass just sliding all over the place. It just sounds so rich and so wonderful. It's kind of cavernous but still edgy at the same time. Yeah, hard to really put a name on some of this stuff. It's so fantastic. All right, kind of off of that real kind of like upfront, some might say kind of overproduced kind of sound, you know, the Dave Matthews Band, the Talk Talk, even, you know, the Brian Eno stuff. Sometimes people, it can kind of be construed as being maybe a little bit kind of like over touchy, overproduced kind of sound. This is one that's just kind of like far more organic sounding and spatial and kind of just, you know, there's no real sense of any real synthesis on this album. I mean, there is like synthesizer work, but early, you know, early to mid 70s sounds, and it's not overbearing. You know, there's not just like tons of fucking Rick Wakeman like riffing on this, just like tons of the same patterns over and over and recycled and regurgitated by Rick Wakeman over and over and over again. The Elias of Sunhillow album that John Anderson put out in 1976 when Yes was taking a Brizache. Of course, Rick Wakeman hadn't been in the band for a couple years already anyway, but all the musicians that he got to play on this, I wouldn't say they're a bunch of unknowns, but I can't think of anyone that I know right off the top of my head who's a familiar name. Anyway, they're all fantastic. Of course, John Anderson does a lot of the instrumentations himself, you know, harp and acoustic guitar and all kinds of stuff. His vocals sound amazing, but just the overall, like I said, that kind of ethereal mix, and it's not too upfront and edgy and punchy. It's all very watercolory. You know what I mean? It has this art just really reflects the sound quality and the recording style and the engineering all together. I just love the way it sounds from that opening track with all the really cool kind of like, you get those kind of like indigenous sounding kind of tribal chants that he's doing, and it sounds like you're kind of just floating in his little fantasy airship, and it's just, I don't know, it's really great. I love the way this album sounds. It's beautiful. A really fantastic artistic expression through and through. Everything about it. One of the greatest solo albums ever made. All right. Thanks again for hanging out with me tonight, guys. I got just a few more to talk about here, and I've been wanting to do an episode like this for a long time and kind of talk about the, you know, I guess the men and women behind the curtain, the people behind the curtains, the wizards of Oz back there making all the sound magic for us. So yeah, visit me on, what's it called? The Instagram. Visit me on Instagram. I'm Square the Circle Records on Instagram. Say what's up. Follow me. And, yeah, share my page with, or, you know, this channel with like other people who are like-minded weirdos like us who like to talk about music and records and stuff. Well, I guess I'll just keep chipping away at this. Here's kind of an oddball for you. I found this years ago, and I was intrigued by the cover art, and then I looked closer, and I'm like, oh, this looks cool, because it was in the, you know, instrumentals section. I, of course, love instrumental music. I'd never seen it before. The cover art was fascinating, and I was like, ooh, this looks great. And I'm like, okay, piano, solo piano music. I love solo piano music. What the fuck? And I look on the back, and there it is. It's produced, recorded, engineered by a man named Tony Arnold and none other than Robert Fripp himself. Released on that Editions EG label that, you know, notorious for a lot of Brian Eno, Harold Budd, lots of other stuff like that. But this is, I'm not even sure how to pronounce it, but it is just Gurdjieff, right? Gurdjieff? Gurdjieff. G.I. Gurdjieff. He was a composer, late 18th century, early 19th century. I think he had probably kicked the bucket by the first few years of the 20th century, and this was all like primarily, sorry, piecing the words together, it's difficult. They're all like not Turkish melodies that like originate somewhere like in the Middle East, Kurdish. All of these are like Armenian, of Kurdish origin. Surrounding stories like whirling dervish stories, all kinds of crazy shit, just crazy shit. And it's like, it's music that I'm just like, a style of music, I mean, that I'm just like wholly unfamiliar with. And it sounds very foreign to someone who is, you know, a Eurocentric, you know, upbringing and, you know, that kind of familial kind of thing that's just kind of bred into you. I didn't hear a lot of sounds like this, and stylistically a lot of music designed this way, but it's just so intriguing and different sounding, and it's amazing. It sounds so gorgeous. And then you'll look deeper and you'll see a name like Robert Fripp, and you're like, wow. You put this on, the side one is amazing. It's called Journey to Inaccessible Places, is the name actually of the album, performed by one pianist named Ilan Sekrov. And just, I don't know how they got the room to sound the way it did. They didn't put, you know, microphones, or if they did direct reel to reel, I'm not sure exactly how they did it. But just the way everything was positioned in the room, he must have mic'd underneath the body of the grand piano he was playing, and just like how they positioned things throughout the room to get the airy sense of just acoustic. I don't know. It's pretty smoky, beautiful, amazing. Anyway, Journey to Inaccessible Places. That just kind of off, you know, the name just kind of makes you think you are going to journey to a very inaccessible, weird place, and this is going to be just off-putting, and it's absolutely not. The sonic richness of it just kind of like envelops you. And anyone that just likes tinkle tunes, soft piano music, I love it. This is a winner. It sounds fucking gorgeous. Yeah. So everybody check it out. That was like 1987. I think it was originally recorded quite a few years earlier. And it's like, it says it's a promo released on Passport, which is crazy. Passport does a lot of like European, like prog and jazz and all kinds of interesting things in the 70s at least. But I guess in the 80s they were distributing stuff like this. So yeah, pretty fantastic. Just wanted to bring this out. A little bit off the beaten path. So, all right, guys, more pop music. This is another one of those that's just like so ethereal, and, you know, just kind of goes off like fireworks in your brain. You can tell there's a lot going on sonically, and it's kind of like, you know, as far as like electronic and synthesis and stuff, there's a lot going on in the background, lots of production and lots of, you know, tricks and bells and whistles and stuff, but more or less it's just accentuating what's really going on the fundamental scale, because this music is quite fundamental, and it's really fantastic, and it's just a wonderful, you know, breed of Euro pop rock, you know, what people will call indie rock, but I just call it kind of like alt rock, with a softer edge, but like I said, really ethereal, really pleasing, lots of great sound effects, and just, you know, lots of reverb, and just, it sounds beautiful. And the band is called Palace. They're fantastic. UK band, Palace. They've had lots of albums. This is probably their second or third LP, and I think they have 4 total. They released one early this year, that I've featured on an episode about some of my favorite music so far of this year. So we'll see if that album makes it all the way to the very end of the year as far as my my top 10 go. But this album was released in 2016. It's called So Long Forever. Lots of wonderful themes about, you know, just leaving society, heading down into the Amazon rainforest, you know, and just kind of like eating a ton of fucking, you know, ayahuasca, and just forgetting yourself and killing your ego. You know, this is an ego death album. It's pretty rad though. I especially love that art, which I believe is like a famous South American artist. Anyway, but this album sounds so dreamy. It's so dreamy. It's beautiful. The musicians too, they just know how to sell that. They sell it so well. Their singer especially, really just mellow presence, mellow delivery of his vocal stylings, and again, the ethereal effects of everything, and the reverb on the guitars, and just the really mellow beat of the drums, and the rhythm section, pulsing bass. It's very, I don't know, it's very easygoing. It's very easygoing music. It's drippy and delicious. Love it to death. Album sounds fantastic. This is kind of, again, in that wheelhouse of just really like ethereal, lots of wonderful synthesis and effects and production, beefy production. This is modern day production we're talking about. Like, you just, you can't beat the old sound of this, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s when we're talking about, you know, stuff that's monaural at you, and then getting into the stereophonic sounds of the 60s and 70s, and how all the magic started. You know, they were working with the magic and really kind of selling it, you know, really selling the theatrics of sound. And I like that. But These days, it's so intense and such a it truly is an art form. I'm not saying it wasn't an art form in the 60s, 70s, 80s with what guys were doing as far as studio magic, but these days it's just like you put this shit on in your head in some cans, and it's just like I'm transported to another goddamn planet, another universe altogether. This type of music does that. Like what I was just talking about with that band Palace, kind of more easygoing and simplistic, you know, and you can just kind of get lost like you're by the beach kind of thing. This one will blast you right through a black hole, you know, and into another dimension. How this album sounds. This was one of my favorites of 2021. It's still one of my favorite albums to throw on and enjoy. Like I said, in headphones, woohoo! It'll fuck you up, man. This shit slaps so hard. This is Deaf Heaven. Deaf Heaven's album, Infinite Granite from last year. It's just so rich. Yeah, so amazing. Infinite Granite, love the artwork. The total presentation of this album just kicks fucking ass. Some name credits, another one, like the band was all over this. This is probably their third full-length LP, their real big number. I mean, they had a huge smash with what was it called? Was it called Sunbather? I don't know. It was a while ago, but I like this one so much more. And this was just a monster of a hit for them in the last year. And the band hugely involved in all the production on this. Let me get some credits here for you guys. Where did it go? There it is. Yeah, the entire mix and everything was by the band and a man named Daniel Thorpe. And then another man named Dave Cooley did the final master on this. Yeah, the final mastered product, just like, yeah, so refined, so dreamy, good shit. Deaf Heaven's Infinite Granite from last year. All right, guys, I'll try to like wind this up here. These are like 3 of my favorite albums as far as the sound quality goes. This one, shit, this probably should have been number 1. I just, every time I put any of their albums on, but especially this one, it just takes me to it takes me back to my childhood. You know how music can do that. I will almost immediately, like upon hearing this, and if I close my eyes, I can very easily just transport in my head back to being 6 years old and sitting on the shag carpet in, you know, our sunken living room in the Thurston district in Springfield, Oregon. And it's 1985 again, and I'm just sitting there, and the smells and the sounds, like it all comes back to me. It's bizarre how music can do that. Yeah, this is one of those albums for me, by the Fleet Foxes. Album's called Helplessness Blues. This was released in 2011 on Sub Pop Recordings. So goes to show that mastermind at Sub Pop, Phil Eck, dude, man, people have no idea how much music that guy has engineered and recorded, engineered, produced, all of it. So much shit for Sub Pop and many other independent artists throughout the last 35 years. Some of my favorite artists, indie artists, you could say, Built to Spill, lots of stuff. Yeah, and this album, like I just was, getting all sappy on you. It's a fucking time, it's a transport module. It's a time machine for me. This is the thing that is the key that starts the ignition to the old, the brain ship that can travel through time. Pretty cool. That's how I feel about this album. So everyone check out the band Fleet Foxes and their album. All of their albums sound amazing, but especially Helplessness Blues, which is my favorite of theirs. Just, I think, they recorded a lot of that shit in like these big airy spaces, so it has that all the boys in the band, at least 3 or 4 of them, they have this wonderful, like, 3 and 4 part harmony style that they, now of course they didn't, create this sound. A lot of it's pulled from, Beach Boys and just all that kind of like, 60s Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. You get that real kind of like 3 and 4 part harmony, like cathedral airy kind of like all encompassing sort of feeling and the sound they get is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. This one too. This one sold my, my dipshit 23-year-old ass. This one sold me on like, wow, what a really cool sound. Just upfront and personal, so organic, so raw. Still adore this album. Really underrated band, rarely talked about. Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, their album Howl. It was like 2013, right? Where's my notes? 2012, sorry, 2012. And yeah, man, like I said, just like a real personal journey through a lot of really interesting concepts, and musically and lyrically and all kinds of things. This album's got a lot of fucking soul, and you feel it. You feel it in the production. This is another one of those that's like the band individualistically and as a whole all had their own little bits and pieces and parts of being producers on this album. They helped record it and mix it, They have lots of credits to their names, lots of other side projects and bands that they're associated with. These guys, again, were already seasoned, kick-ass musicians. They weren't just some kind of like happenstance, good-looking, young, fresh band that just like wants to get signed. No, they've been making music for decades, you could tell. Pretty fucking amazing. The name I wrote down here is being associated with being one of the producers along with the band credited, and probably did part of the mastering. His name was Peter Black. Peter Black put his stamp all over this album too. But yeah, anyone that's not familiar with Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, dude, this album Howl, which I feel is their best album, you gotta check this out. It sounds just phenomenal. Okay, here's my last one, guys. You'll expect this coming from me, but in my opinion, this is not their best album, but it's their best sounding album. It's their most recent album, just a couple years ago. Tool finally gave us their epic, after like more than a decade of brewing and stewing this thing, but really, only spending the majority of a year actually piecing it together in the studio. But they've got a famed engineer and audio master that they've been working with for their last 3 albums, basically everything since their freshman debut, their first full-length LP in 1993, which was Undertow, recorded and produced by a woman named Sylvia Massey. This one, or every subsequent album since, Lateralis in 2001, 10,000 Days in 2006, and then a long haul till Fear Inoculum. A man named Joe Barresi. Joe Barresi is responsible for the insanely fucking cool, very unique sound that Tool gives the world. This happens to be the super deluxe 5 LP issue that they did most recently, just to like, piss a lot of people off with this like kind of ridiculously expensive gift given the world, a gift given curse, I guess you could say. No, it's fun. It's fun to peel all this shit out and look at everything, and oh my god, it sounds fucking amazing. It sounds absolutely stunning. And I talked a medium amount of shit about this when it first came out, of course, because of the price point, but whatever, dude. Everyone all the time goes to the record store and drops $160, on a bunch of dumb shit. You may as well just drop, one solid chunk on something that's just going to be like, a magnificent artistic representation of something that, is truly it's pretty magnificent. And just again, like I said, the sonic clarity of this, how it can be so just like crunching and, just like murderous at times, like how heavy and crunching and crazy this album could be, but then be so much finesse and beauty and just kind of like otherworlding, uplifting kind of, sonic fidelity that these guys produce, because they're such a seasoned, a seasoned bunch of rock stars. They know their shit. They know what they're doing. Each individually like knows their instrument through and through, and all of the technicalities and all of the, gizmos and gadgets that they have to play with. They all know their shit. They know what the sound, they've been harnessing, you know, and focusing on their craft and their sound for 30 years, and they're amazing. And luckily they've got someone, like I said, by the name of Joe Barresi, who has been working strictly with them on that sound for more than half their career. For 20 plus years, he's been the guy, you know, the fifth tool head, you know, in there, and he's what's hugely responsible for their amazing sound in the studio, which they can reproduce on a live scale. They truly can. It's pretty fucking incredible how amazing this band sounds. They get written off so much as just being kind of like another like new rock meat metal head band from the 90s or whatever, and I don't know. People have their opinions about Tool. Let's hear them, everybody. Tell me all about them. But yeah, besides, like I said, the man Joe Barresi being the mastermind of that, it was mastered by Bob Ludwig. Again, full circle. Oh man, that name, Bob Ludwig, he knows how to just like put the icing on the cake, man. He's the mastermind of the rock and roll world for sure, Bob Ludwig. Oh, someone's car alarm's going off. Perfect timing. I'm going to just sign out. Thanks for listening to me talk about some of my favorite sounding albums tonight, guys. I hope you have a wonderful week. Maybe I'll see you again later this week. So peace in the crease, and keep them clean. Love you guys. Peace out.